Hi, welcome back to the Throttle Cable. I'm Rob. I've got a relatively straightforward maintenance task today. I'm going to take off the front bumper in the 996, remove the shrouds around the radiators and just check that they're nice and clean. It's a good thing to do, once every year or once every 6 months. Just try and get it as frequent as you can. Stops you getting a load of debris up in the radiators and then rotting out, which can be quite a big task to replace them. The front of my car is an aero kit car, but essentially it's the same process as if it's a GT3 or if it is just a bog standard 996 Carrera with a standard bodywork. The way you take the bumper off and put it back on is exactly the same. So let me show you how it's done. These are all the tools I'm going to be using to do the job. I've got all of my screwdrivers, which are going to be used to release all of the Phillips fasteners underneath the bumper. On some of the later cars, the Mark II 996s, you'll have Torx instead, but I needed Torx, which are down here, to release the guards around the radiators. They're a T25, and I've got my impact driver out just because underneath the car where some of these screws get rusty, using an impact driver helps to release the threads a lot easier than using a screwdriver. Sometimes using the screwdriver, that turning force you put on by hand, because it's not kind of straight down the pole of the screwdriver, can chew up the plastics, and the impact driver is just very good at releasing it. And then underneath the arches, you've got to release a couple of the plunger tabs. So I'm going to be using, a flathead first to start them off, and then my needle nose pliers to pull them out, silicone lubricant to help them move. Then I've also got a quick detailer because my hands are going to get mucky in the front of the bumper. That will just help clean it off come the end. Then a nice bit of blanket on the far side for where I'm going to place the bumper, the lights and everything, just to keep everything nice and safe. A little bit of forward planning as well. I've got some stainless fasteners to go back in to replace the screws that are already there. You've got some 4.8 by 19s and 4.8 by 16s, and that basically does all of the little screws underneath the car, and a couple of new speed nuts as well, because I know in the corner of the bumper these get quite rusty, so I'm going to replace those too. So let's get to work. First two steps, these aren't essential, but they're very helpful if you choose to do them. I'm going to jack the car up and put some blocks under the wheels, and then I'm going to remove the headlights. The reason you do that, one, once the car's up in the air, it's much easier to release all the little screws that sit under the bumper, and two, there is a black trim that comes around the front underneath the bonnet, and it actually loops under each side of the headlamp, and if you just pull it out, there is a risk, especially if these have got brittle, you can crack the lenses down each side. So just by removing the headlights and by getting that up in the air, makes the whole job a lot easier to start off with. Okay, so to release the headlight, it's a pretty straightforward task. You rotate this anti-clockwise, you release that off of the little stalk, you then take out the bung, which is sat in here, and that gives you access in to release the headlamp. You take the headlamp removal tool, which is part of your toolkit, you insert it in, you'll feel it drive home like that, and then you just rotate it towards the back of the car, and then the headlamp pops forward like that, and now the headlamp's released and I can just pull it out and repeat the process on the other side. With the headlights removed, removal of this is really quite easy. So this little tab just needs to turn 90 degrees because there's two locking tabs on the back of it, and that then releases it out of this hole, and you can just go from end to end, just work around this. It's nice and easy to use this big opening to get that through. If you pull it across, 3, 4, and then pull it out, and these are the bits that lip underneath the headlights. So yeah, as I say, you're better off taking the headlights out unless you trust your 20-year-old headlights not to crack. But I don't think it's a risk worth taking personally, but that's purely up to yourselves. Once you've removed the black trim on the slam panel from here, you've then just got two screws that you need to release. One Phillips here and one Phillips here. Removal of the side lights is very straightforward. From the back edge, you can just give them a pull, release the clip, and out they come. It's just this little spring clip on the back that's holding it in place, and then you can then release this clip. You just push the metal tab down, pull them apart, and that will release the repeater for you. Now with that side marker removed, you get to the screw that you need to release, and there is another screw which you can see coming into this speed nut here, and the only way to access it is to get in behind the wheel liner. You've got to remove a plunger, which is there. You can see it, that's one here, and there's another plunger up here which you can see pushing in to this point. Remove them both. If you don't remove them both, you'll pop it. It's much easier to have the wheel facing outwards when you're doing each side. That allows you then just to pull this back slightly so you can get your fillets up to release this screw from the speed nut. This is what one of the plungers looks like when it's removed. So this is what the silicone spray is for. If you silicone spray that shaft, it helps the plunger move in and out. So when you push it in like that, it splays out these tabs. And this one's actually got one broken tab on this side, so it's easier to see what it's doing. But it splays those tabs out. And if, like me, you've got one that's broken, if you're in the UK, Heritage Parts, you can buy these for about 40p each. It's just a standard VW part, so it's nice and easy to get hold of these. But with those two off, it's then just very easy just to pull this trim out, get your hand inside, and then release the screw from underneath. You literally just have to go vertically straight underneath it and unwind it. It's the hardest screw to get to, but it's really not that difficult if you've taken these steps and released the wheel liner. Okay, so to release the wheel liner, once you've got the plungers out, just push from here. That will just let you get your thumb in and pull the whole thing out. I've seen some people try and start from the bottom, even with like a Phillips screwdriver or a flat nose screwdriver, and get under there, and you'll just damage all this paint. So just do it the proper way. There's a little cut out here for you to get your hand in and work it out from there. It's nice and easy if you do it that way. So with the wheel liner released, that's your access point essentially to get up to that speed nut. You just pop your hand in there with a screwdriver and away it comes. So these are the two screws that you'll have out of the side marker and then from this speed nut. The one thing I would just say as a tip, they've got these little washer that sits around them, and it does like to sit here when you remove the screw. Make sure you take it out, because otherwise when you do end up removing the bumper cover, that will fall somewhere and you'll probably lose it and it'll be a right pig. So yeah, just make sure you retrieve all of those parts. So that's that side done. So once that's done, I'm just going to turn the steering rack back to the opposite side and sort out the opposite side exactly the same fashion, exactly the same order. Then I'll start releasing some of the screws under and on top of the bumper. So going underneath the front of the bumper, we've got 3 screws first. So 1, 2, 3. These just hold the centre, and that'll get you most things released. There's another 2, one here, and then opposite side, you can just see it there, one there. And when you get right over to the corner of the bumper, over there, there's 2 screws, 1, 2, and similarly on this side, if we can see them, they are 1, 2. So once we've got all of those screws out, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in total, that will release the whole underside of the bumper cover. There's a good chance you won't have this step, but just in case you do, toe eye needs to be removed so you can get the bumper off. Don't forget it, otherwise it'll probably pull your bumper something rotten and it won't be nice. So every screw is now released. The only final thing before I pull off the bumper cover to be cautious of is the sensor under here. So the sensor releases with a little grey clip, and you just push the release tab in on the side. You might find it easier to release it once the bumper cover is slightly off rather than trying to do it when it's still in situ. But that is it down there. Essentially just make sure that's released, because that's the last thing holding the bumper on essentially. Okay, so I just lifted the bumper forward ever so slightly, then I've released this by removing that tab. So yeah, if you just remove it forward slightly, and I mean like that, so I've just got mine sat slightly forward, gives you enough room to get your hand in there and just release it. You might be able to do it if you've got small hands and the bumper cover's still on, but I haven't, I've got big hands. So I have to take it off first a little bit. Right, now I can remove it and go and put it over on my blanket, which is nicely laid out there, ready for this to go on top of so we don't scratch all of the paint. Next thing once the bumper off is to remove the shroud around the radiators. So there's 5 torques that hold this in. So under here we've got 1, 2, and then above 3, and into the corner 4, bottom corner 5. So once you remove all 5 of those, that will just pop forward and expose the rad. So with the shroud off, you can then release 1, 2 more torques, and that enables you then to pull this rad left and release this tab here. The hoses are flexible, so it just means that once you've released those 2 screws, you can move that to the left, it will pop out of that tab, bring it forward slightly, then you can clean in behind the radiators. So with the 2 screws removed, yep, you can then slide it to the left, pop it out of this clip, and then you can get right in behind behind the radiators to give them a nice clean out. When you move to the other side of the car, it's exactly the same process, but you just need to pop this rubber bung back through the shroud when you pull this side off, because that sensor wire is just poking through. But it's just a rubber grommet which you can just squeeze and pop back through there, and it will just remain in situ whilst you clean out this side of the radiator. Once you've done that, it's time to start putting it all back together. Now, putting things back together, this is my old for new policy. So that is the old rusted screw going through, and here's my new stainless fastener that's going to go in instead and last a hell of a lot longer. Now it's all back together. This is just taking a look. These are all the stainless fasteners that are now under the car. You can see them up in the corner. I've also gone along these guards as well and replaced the 3 along there. So it just gives everything a bit more longevity. And then all the way over to that corner as well. Everything's been replaced down there. Job's a given.